welcome to today's lecture. So today we will be looking at the components of human computer interaction. So now when we see human computer interaction and the components associated with it, so it deals with the understanding of complex interplay between the users and the computers, and it aims to enhance the usability, accessibility and user experience in the area of digital devices. So HCI integrates principles from computer science, cognitive psychology, ergonomics, and it aims to develop systems that are not only functional but also are intuitive and they are enjoyable to use. So this field of study seeks to optimize the efficiency, effectiveness and satisfaction with which users can achieve their objectives through technology, and the aim is to ultimately bridge the gap between human capabilities and the computational power. So if we see the main components involved in HCI, we can see that it is human computer interaction. So the first component that we will discuss is the human or the user. So the user, as we have seen in the earlier lectures also, is in the center of the design process. So here also the user or the human is the center of HCI, and this user refers to the person who's interacting with the computer system, and therefore it is important to understand the needs, behaviors, the cognitive abilities and limitations of this user or the human being. And this is imperative for the design process because it leads to the effectiveness of the devices that will be developed finally. Now second is the computer or also the technology. So the computer involves hardware and software, and this is what the user interacts with. So from the physical devices like laptops and smartphones to softwares, so this whole range is covered by the computers. And so as an example, we can see that the smartphone that we use on daily basis, so they have a touch screen, and it is part of the technology that enables us to interact with the different apps and using different gestures like pinching or touching the screen. The third component is the interaction, and the interaction here refers to the way the users and computers communicate with each other, and this involves an input which has to be put in from the user's side. So it could be pressing of a button or it could be clicking or typing, and then the output which is in the form of the display or the visual representation that is on the digital device output. So now continuing to look at the components of HCI, so there are two basic things. So one is the primary interaction paradigm and the other is a secondary interaction paradigm. So we'll take a look at both of these aspects. So the primary interaction paradigm, we can see in the image here as well, that this refers to the most direct and fundamental ways in which the users interact with the computers or the digital systems. So these paradigms, they define the core method of communication between the user and the system. So we will be just looking at, and these components and discussing them a little bit, and we will take them more in detail in the upcoming lectures, but just a little overview of these. So one is the command line interface where the user interacts with the computer by typing the text. Then we have the touch based interactions. So here the users interact with touch sensitive devices using gestures like tapping, swiping or pinching the screen. And the example for this is smartphones and our tablets that we use. And these are mainly touch based, these particular two devices, and they allow the users to navigate applications by touching the screen. Now, in the secondary paradigm, which of the HCI, so these are more specialized, or we can say they are auxiliary methods that complement the primary interaction paradigms that we just discussed. So these are typically used to enhance or to extend the functionality of the primary interaction methods, and they provide users with additional ways to interact with the systems. So, some of these secondary interaction paradigms are the multimodal interaction. So, now this combines multiple interaction methods like using voice commands along with touch or gesture, or a combination of all of them. So, for example, when we have a smart car, so the user might use the voice command to use the navigation system, and also touch screen to maybe zoom in to the map or to read some detail or check their current position. The next is augmented reality and virtual reality, AR and VR. So here the user interacts with digital information in a more immersive way and in a more enhanced environment. So this is often done by using wearable devices, and a lot of apps are there which allow the users to interact with digital objects and through their smart phone screens as well. So nowadays, even on our apps like Zomato, a lot of companies are coming up with their food products using this technology. So one can see the product as it would appear when it is delivered at home. So that is another area. Now, the haptic feedback, which is touch. So this provides a tactile feedback to the user, sort of gives back a sensation to the user, and this allows them to feel the sensation and the environment. So this is like a feedback that they are getting through their skin. So this we are seeing commonly in video games and in many other applications as well. Even in phone, when we are pressing some button, there is a feedback that we get that the button has been pressed. And in video games, especially where there are games which involve some kind of falling or some other physical movement, so the user actually feels that jerk. So it communicates the action through the device to the user, giving it a more immersive experience to the user. The other, gesture based interactions. So here users interact with systems through physical gestures, and for this often cameras are used to capture this motion, and motion sensors are also put on the body or the device that they are wearing, the wearable device. They may have some sensors which will communicate this body movement to the device and vice versa. So there are some games like Xbox that allows the users to control games using body movements, and which are detected by a camera that is installed. So in many modern systems, these primary and secondary interaction paradigms are integrated to create a richer and more intuitive user experience. Now, coming to the other main components of HCI, we look at these three here. So one is our computer. So computer is basically has the following components which can be clubbed into basic categories. So in these two categories that we see, hardware and software. So hardware means the physical device that the user interacts with. So this includes keypads, keyboards, mouses, buttons, joysticks, and other even screens and displays. And the softwares are the programs that run on the hardware and provide an interface for the interaction. So these work as a medium between the user and the processing modules in the computer. So they are what ties these two together, the hardware and the user. So now we can see a few devices here, a few examples of the input, output, and other devices. So we are quite familiar with some of these devices, such as the keyboard, mouse, button, keypad, touchpad, stylus. So these are the input devices, and the output devices could be a cathode ray tube, LCD screens, LED screens, which are now giving us that output in terms of a display or in terms of a visual representation of what we are inputting into the device, and also projectors and speakers and headset for the auditory output. So there are some other devices as well apart from these input and output devices that are used in the area of research, and they have several benefits and applications in the area of education, gaming, and also healthcare. So we'll take a few examples and discuss some of these devices. So the first is the data glove. So these are wearable devices that allow users to interact with digital interfaces by manipulating their hand gestures. So there are several sensors that are embedded in these gloves, like haptic feedback, also for motion trackers, and they detect the position of the fingers of the user. So now they have several applications, these gloves. So first is the virtual reality and augmented reality, AR/VR. So here the gloves enable the users to manipulate the virtual objects and also to interact with digital interfaces, so as if they were actually present in front of them. And this is used in a lot in the area of gaming and for training simulations and other kind of immersive experiences. The next is the robotics control, which is also where these gloves are extensively used, and 3D modeling and animation. So here they allow the artists and designers to create and manipulate 3D models, and they offer a more intuitive way of getting creative. The next is the braille display. These are mainly used for people with visual deficiency, wherein the vision may be impacted in some way. So they help people with these impairments to read a text on a computer or other digital devices by converting the text into braille. So braille text is created and then it can be read by the user. So, and the next is the sensors. So sensors of course are very crucial in all of these devices, and many different types of sensors are actually in application, and depending on the use, the sensor may be used. So there are touch sensors, motion sensors, proximity sensors, voice and sound sensors, eye tracking, and haptic sensors, and they have several applications, and they allow the computers and devices to gather data from physical environment or the user's actions, and then they translate that data into meaningful input, and then that can impact the interaction that the user will have with the machine or the computer. So now there are some devices that are capable of functioning as both input and output devices. So we saw in the previous slide, we have segregated devices for input and devices for output, but there are these devices that we will discuss in forthcoming slides which act as both, which can do both. So the advantage of this is that they can enable a more interactive and seamless user experience, and they can receive input from user and they can provide the feedback or output in the response, and oftentimes this response is in real time, so that makes the experience also more natural and more smooth. So some of these devices are screens or touch screens. So they are wherein the user can interact with the touch screen by touching the screen or pinching the screen, so they can zoom in, zoom out, they can write with their finger, they can annotate and gesture, and a lot of other actions can be performed on this kind of a screen. And this screen displays visual information, so it can display text, images, animations, and the advantage is that it responds immediately to the user's input. So like we've already seen in the previous few slides, that smartphone, tablets are some good examples of this type of device. The other few devices are haptic devices. So where the users can provide input by touching, pressing, or manipulating the device. And these devices provide tactile feedback. So like vibration or pressure can be felt by the user. And this again we see a lot in the area of gaming, where the haptic feedback is provided through playstations and other games to the user, and with the help of commands like joystick and buttons, and this haptic feedback is received. Then the next is the stylus pens with feedback. So these pens can be used to write, draw, interact with touchscreens. So something like I have here, which can help us annotate on the screen. And so they give a more realistic sensation. So the aim of these pens and styluses by designers and people who are working in the technology area is to provide a better feel, like as if you're writing on paper. So that is another sensation that we are looking for. So as a pencil or pen scratches on the paper, so that kind of feedback we receive from this stylus. So examples of these are several that we use, which are around us, like Apple pencils and other pencils. Samsung also has its own pencil. So there are many several different types of these devices are available for both drawing or writing or annotating or for many other purposes. Then we have VR and AR headsets. So they include sensors that track head movements, eye gaze, hand gestures, and they allow users to interact with virtual environments. And they display immersive visuals, and sometimes they provide auditory output as well. So on the screen, we can see an example of the Apple headset, and there are many other headsets by many different companies, and they are striving to provide a seamless and a positive user experience. Then we have interactive whiteboards. We can see an example here on the screen as well. So where the user can write or draw on the board using a stylus or their fingers and provide input, and this input that they provide is instantly digitized. And the advantage is that in these kind of boards, they are more interactive, so they encourage collaboration and people can have discussions. And the as we saw, the idea to visualize it, so it's very useful in visualizing the idea of an individual or whether if it is a team idea. So during COVID-19 also, these boards came very handy, because to reach out to many people, and since the classroom blackboard was not to be used, so then these boards came very handy. Similarly, tablets also serve this purpose of displaying sort of like a blackboard representation through the tablet and to the students on the other side of their device. In addition to these, there are some other devices as well, like biometric devices, so wherein the the finger sensor or the eye or the face, all these gestures are recognized, and these devices display authentication results. So they allow the user to enter a space or perform a certain activity that others may be prohibited to partake in. So we see this fingerprint sensor on our phones also nowadays. So the phone unlocks as we touch the sensor with our thumb or finger. Then we also have other smart devices like a smart mirror. We can see on the screen here. This is an example from Adidas. This is from a showroom in London. So now these smart mirrors can detect the user's presence, gesture, or touch commands. So this particular mirror can allow the user to see the product, enlarge it, or change the color and take photos and compare that how the product would look on them while they are wearing it. So this helps the user visualize again without going through the whole process of donning and doffing. So they are now used quite a lot in retail stores, and they allow the customers to try on the clothes without actually trying them on, so virtually, and allows the users to make a choice. So in addition to these, there are two other important components, memory and processor of the computer, because they play an important role as well in the human computer interaction. So the computer memory, if we take the memory aspect first, so one of the important requirements is smooth performance. So for achieving smooth performance, we require adequate memory, and that ensures that applications run smoothly without any type of lag, and they provide a seamless user experience. So also there are certain tasks that we do on our devices, like opening heavy images or working on heavy softwares. So the memory intensive tasks such as these are also to be taken care of, and we require smooth performance there as well. So memory becomes important. The second is the data handling here, the faster data handling, because when we have sufficient memory, it allows us to store data, specifically user data, user preferences, which are critical for personalized experiences. And we need to have a quick access, and some of these features are to be used quite frequently. So that is another role of memory here. And third, we have the responsive interfaces. So when we have memory availability, so it affects the responsiveness of the interface and enables quick feedback to user interactions, which are crucial for maintaining user engagement and satisfaction. Now, the next, which is the processor. So here we have real time interaction. Now, if the system has high processing power, so it allows for real time interactions, so which is essential in today's time where the kind of work we are doing. So that real time interaction is important, like voice recognition, gesture control, interactive animations. So these are a few things that enhance the engagement of the user with the system. So for that purpose, processor becomes important. The next is our complex calculations. So the advanced processing capabilities also allow for the execution of complex calculations and algorithms, and also for data processing and data analysis. So this can improve the functionality and intelligence of the applications, especially where we require things like predictive text or recommendations from the system. And also we can see, like, we have AI and machine learning that we are using extensively nowadays, so that quick feedback is highly imperative. And the next is performance optimization. So efficient processing also ensures that tasks are completed quickly and efficiently, and the waiting time is reduced, and so that the overall speed of the application, to improve it, becomes one of the main aims here. So now the combined impact of on UI UX and HCI of this is these four basic points. So the first being enhanced user experience. So the combination of sufficient memory and the processing power, it allows the creation of sophisticated high quality interfaces which are visually appealing and they're also functionally sound. So that is one. The second is our usability. So they contribute to the usability of system by ensuring that the interactions are smooth and they are quick and fast, and there is no lag which is hampering the experience of the user. The third point is innovation in interaction design. So these advanced hardware capabilities allow designers and developers to experiment with innovative interaction paradigms like we saw earlier, like AR, VR. All these technologies can be incorporated seamlessly into the system, and again making system intuitive and also productive for the user. And finally, the scalability and adaptability. So systems with which have sufficient or adequate memory and processing power, so they can support a wide range of devices and usage scenarios. So mobile phones being one, and then high end computers, and they ensure there is consistency which is maintained throughout these devices. It's not that only the high end device will work well, but also a much cheaper product should also give the same kind of experience to the user. Now, these 2 points become important for the designer, keeping in mind what we have just seen in the past two slides, that designers need to be aware of the speed and performance of the system which the end user will use, and then they have to design it accordingly. And second is that they need to be aware of the properties and technical specifications like behaviors and limitations as they influence the nature and style of the interaction. So, continuing in components of HCI, we will look at the human aspect, the human component, who is the end user, and this can end user can be one person, one individual user, or also it can be a group of users. And so understanding the different types of users is crucial for designing interfaces that cater to their varying needs, skills, and experiences. And we can generally categorize the users in terms of these three categories: novice, intermittent, and the expert user. So they are basically beginners who have little or no experience with the system or technology, and they may require more guidance, tutorials, or help features in order to finish the task at hand, and also to navigate and use the interface that they are interacting with. And since they are novice and since they don't have much of prior experience, so their interaction are usually slow, and also they can be prone to errors as well, because they're still learning the new system. So here, what is important from the perspective of the design consideration for the novice user is that the the designer should prioritize the simplicity and of the interface, and also how can we provide clear instructions to the user. And the intuitive design also helps, so they can be step by step instructions, they can be a manual or a help center where this novice user can go and clarify their doubts. And so we can think of an example where there's a new employee in a company and they have to use a new software. So of course it will take them some time to understand how it works, and they may need to refer to some kind of a manual or take help from one of their colleagues. So how can we make this interaction in a way that they can catch up very quickly? So that should be the aim when we are looking at the novice user. The second is the intermittent user. So they are generally users who have used the system somewhat, who are familiar with the system, and they may have a basic understanding of how it works, but they may not be fully familiar with all the functions of the system. So they may also forget how to perform certain tasks because they may not be using the system on a daily basis or a regular basis. So here the importance of learnability also becomes important, and relearnability, that once we have learned something, how for how long can we retain it, and then can we bring it to use, put it to use even after a gap of certain time has gone by. So when we are thinking of the design considerations for the intermittent user, so the interface should provide easy access to help, resources, shortcuts for common tasks, and features like tooltips or some other kind of help features can be there, so that they can help them recall quickly what they already are familiar with, so that they are able to learn it, relearn it as quickly as possible. And of course, when the design is consistent, so that also helps in bringing back the memory faster. So again, taking an example, we can think of somebody who maybe edits the videos, but not, it's not their job, they do it as a hobby. For example, they knew how to do it, but after a certain while, how can they catch up on this particular software and do their job efficiently and quickly? So that is one thing wherein maybe, a quick template or a, a simple interface of the software itself can help them recall. So in our computers also, if you see, the computer usually comes with this software called Paint in our desktops. So it's a very basic software, and as compared to a more advanced software like Photoshop, it is quite primitive in that sense. But for very quick actions like cropping something or coloring the background or making the image smaller, so that software is very fast and does the work very efficiently. So something, it's something that the user can quickly come back to, and they will not get lost in all the icons and other functions that are available. So then, keeping, so that is an important factor, that if the user neither falls between the novice and the expert, then how quickly can they relearn? And then finally we have the expert user. So now this expert user is somebody who knows the system very well, who are very adept at using this software or the system. They have the knowledge and the expertise and experience of using it, and they are familiar with the advanced features, with shortcuts, with keyboard shortcuts and other type of shortcuts. And for them, some of these tutorials or these prompts could be very annoying as well, because they don't need these prompts that the intermittent user and the novice user may require. So also they may require to customize, because they may have certain tools or certain functions that they use on a regular basis. So they may also want to customize some of those features, and so they can quickly come back to those features and start working. So when we think of the design considerations for the expert users, then the interface should offer advanced features, customization options, and keyboard shortcuts. And since they appreciate efficiency and they're already working on it on a regular basis, as we are assuming, since they are expert users, so then we can do away with prompts and other kind of interferences that the expert user may find as annoying or as something which is interfering with their work. So we can think of, as an example, somebody who uses a software like Photoshop regularly, and so they know several shortcuts and keyboard shortcuts and other shortcuts, and how they can customize it, customize their screen, have the tools that they want handy where they are, quickly find them, so that their work is efficiently done. So with this we come to the end of today's class. I'll see you in the next lecture. See you. Thank you.